We're now going to have a look at working with macros. If we move down, you'll notice there's a tab here called macros. If we expand on that, you'll see under macros we've got variables, macros and match strings. We're just going to concentrate on macros at the moment. When I expand the macros, you'll see there's two default macros. One is startup and the other's looping. Within the macro configuration here, you'll notice both of them are blank as default. So if you don't want to use them, you don't have to, but I'd always recommend never delete them. Now, what the startup macro is, whenever the Genie first starts up, whatever's in the startup macro will then run. So if the power is perhaps just been lost in the premises, power comes back on, the Genie starts up, it will run whatever's in the startup macro. In the looping macro, whatever's in the looping macro will continuously run whenever the startup macro is not running, whenever an IR or a script device is not running, it'll run whatever's in the looping macro. So that's a continuous looping macro that can run in the Genie. Now let's add a new one. So to add a new macro, we right mouse click on macros, add a new one. We can click on edit. Let's do a nice simple one to show you how easy it is to start with. I'm going to call this maybe Channel 72, TV Channel 72. So rather than the customer having to hit a keypad in his 72, we're going to set it that they can hit perhaps a TV channel logo, Channel 72. When they hit that, it will then go to that channel. I can expand on my TV remote control because it's going to be for a TV channel, and we can just get Channel 7 and Channel 2, drag them across into the macro, and bingo. Now, with that, of course, when we run that macro, we might want a delay between running the first IR out and the second one. So if I right mouse click out and go edit, the first window that we see open is what the actual command or the action is going to take of what we've just programmed. On this example, we're going to send an IR from the living room TV as digit 1 as a single pulse. I can go across here to delay and put a delay in here. Let's say put a delay of 200 milliseconds, 0.2 of a second. So now when we run it, it's going to send, we run this macro, it will send a channel 7 out, wait for 200 milliseconds or 0.2 of a second, and then send digits 2 out. Simple as that. We then hit save, and that macro is then saved. If we then scroll back down to the macros, we'll see that the macro for channel 72 is added to the list. Let's go and add another one now. This example, we'll edit it. This time I'm going to call it Watch a Movie. So when we run Watch Movie macro, we may want to go down to my Blu-ray player, go down here and power it on. So we'll drag the power on. We can then go up to the TV, maybe power the TV on. We then may go down to our M1, go to our functions, and we might want to operate a task. So I can go trigger task, pull that along, and I may have set a task up within the M1 that when it's ran, example task number 2, and when task 2 is run, it might dim the lights, shut the curtains, and run a few other functions that you may want to do. We then, once we've run that, we may then want to go back and hit the play button on the Blu-ray player. Again, we can put delays in there, so if I right mouse click and go edit, we might want to put 200 milliseconds from sending the powering it on before we power the TV on. We may also want, or you don't have to, run a delay on there. Maybe this time it's a 500 milliseconds, half a second. And then we might want to, when all that's done, we might want to wait again half a second and the play button is done. So you can add and delete things in there. We can also put some qualifiers in there. If I right mouse click, we've got this evaluations tab. Now in the evaluations tab, if I click it, we have if variable. So we can set variables on if the relay is in a state, if a trigger variable or a variable is in a particular state. If that variable is greater than 1, And then we've also got some and or statements, or if another variable is set. So you can see we're using the variables, and I'll hit OK on this. We're using the variables. We can build up some very powerful macros depending on the application. So on this example, when we run watch movie, we're going to power on the Blu-ray player. We're going to wait 200 milliseconds and power on the living room TV if it's already powered off. We've got half a second. We'll wait, but then if that variable is greater than 1, then we'll run the M1 task, because we might have another macro that when the M1 task is running to turn that user variable 3 off or less than 1. So we'll only run it if certain conditions apply. Then we're going to wait half a second and we're going to then play the Blu-ray. Now if I save that, and let's expand, minimize a few of these trees just to give us a bit of room here. We can then see the macros that we've added. Now once we've added the macros, the vital thing that we must do is go up here and upload those macros to the project, or to the Genie I should say. So that will then go through, it's uploaded successful. Now if I want to test a macro, I can just right mouse click on the macro before we build any GUIs, which we'll have a look at in a moment, and I can hit test, and yes, that macro went, and my TV's now switched across to channel 72. So there's a nice quick and easy ways of making up some simple macros. You can build as many as you like in there and test them on the fly before you actually build any GUIs. And as you can see, so you can build some very powerful macros with some trigger variables as well. So yeah, we'll have a look in a moment at designing some GUIs so we can use those in the GUI page for the customer.